Testing, 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 testing. Testing, 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 testing. Test, 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 test. Can you hear me now? Yes, that's good. Good morning. Excited about Speech Meet. This is new for us. So we're going to be streaming, and we're also going to be, you guys will get a little bit of projection from this mic, okay? So that's going to be a little bit new. So all I'm asking is that when you come up, don't just jump right in. I may have to adjust the mic. I don't want it up blocking your face, right? So we can see you when you present. I just want it, like if I'm standing here right now, this would be able to pick me up. Maybe I want it a little bit higher, right? So I can make the adjustments on the mics when you guys come up. It's not a problem at all. So I'll come up, and if there needs to be an adjustment. This gives you quite a lot as well to move the mic. So we'll just make sure that's where it's supposed to be. And you'll give it just like you always do. You'll just be standing a little bit farther back, because we usually stand right up on the edge. So you'll be standing a little bit farther back, and when you come up here, you can take your gaiter down while you give your speech. A couple of things. If you need to get up and leave, do that between the speeches. So when they finish, and they come down, that's when you leave. And do not come in until you hear someone applauding for a finished speech. Don't come in the middle. Don't figure that you know. Just wait for that point so that you're not walking in the middle of someone doing your speech. Sit quietly. Don't make any reaction. And also, really important, don't assume that you know when the speech is done. In our class yesterday, we had someone who made applause in their speech, and you've heard that speech sometimes when they start clapping back, and they're like, oh, that's not the end of the speech. They just took a pause because they couldn't figure out exactly where they were, and they had to think for a minute. So you may think the speech is over, but they're just taking a pause, trying to regroup themselves, and then they're going to go forward. So wait until they either bow, curtsy, or come down, especially just wait for them to start walking down, and you'll see because they'll come off the mic and they'll start going to their seat. That's when we'll clap and say good job. Now before that, this year we're doing a little bit differently with judging. And we have two judges that will be judging their independent living children, grandchildren in the school that they're judging over, or even any classes that will be presented that they're judging over. And we also this year added that the memorization, the person doing memorization is usually a home teacher because they're the most familiar with speech. So after discussing that with the staff, we decided that it would be more consistent if we had someone to just watch memorization. So we have someone every day now who will just watch memorization or speech meet and speech off. That is not the homeroom teacher. So that the homeroom teacher can just focus on any prompts that are needed and that's very well. So there's 4 people involved now instead of 3. Memorization judge, 2 presentation judges, and your homeroom teacher that will prompt you if you have any prompts. What am I forgetting? If I forget anything, you guys know what you're doing. Take a deep breath, go 3, get yourself nice and relaxed. You come up and knock out a park. You guys know it. So amazing, great. Remind me if I forget about something. Alright, I will come up and I'll do it. If I forget, it's up to me
Excerpt from Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring, Bilbo's Song. I cannot thank you as I should, Bilbo, for this and for all your past kindnesses, said Frodo. Don't try, said the old hobbit, turning around and slapping him on the back. Ow, he cried. You are too hard now to slap. But there you are. Hobbits must stick together, especially us Bagginsies. All I ask in return is, take as much care of yourself as you can, and bring back any old songs and tales you can come by. I should like to finish my book before you return, said Frodo. I should like to finish my second book if I am spared. He broke off and turned to the window again, singing softly. I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies and summers that have been, of yellow leaves and gossamer and autumns that there were, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood and every spring there is a different green. I sit beside the fire and think of people long ago and people who will see a world that I shall never know. But all the while I sit and think of times there were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door.
For Want of a Horseshoe Nail, adapted from James Baldwin. This famous legend and rhyme is based on the demise of England's King Richard III, whose defeat at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485 has been immortalized by Shakespeare's famous line, a horse, my kingdom, for a horse." It reminds us that little duties neglected bring great downfalls. King Richard III was preparing for the fight of his life. An army, led by Henry, Earl of Richmond, was marching against him. The contest would determine who would rule England. The morning of the battle, Richard sent a groom to make sure his favorite horse was ready. "Shoe him quickly," the groom told the blacksmith. "The king wishes to ride at the head of his troops." "You'll have to wait," the blacksmith answered. "I've shoed the king's whole army in the last few days, and now I've got to get more iron." "I can't wait," the groom shouted impatiently. "The king's enemies are advancing right now. We must meet them on the field. Make do with what you have." So the blacksmith bent to his task. From a bar of iron, he made 4 horseshoes. He hammered and shaped and fitted them to the horses' feet. Then he began to nail them on. But after he'd fastened 3 shoes, he found he did not have enough nails for the 4th. I need 1 or 2 more nails, and it will take some time to hammer them out. I told you, I can't wait, the groom said impatiently. I hear the trumpets now. Can't you just use what you've got? I can put the shoe on, but it won't be as secure as the others. Will it hold? Asked the groom. It should, answered the blacksmith, but I can't be certain. Well, then just nail it on, the groom cried, and hurry, or King Richard will be angry with us both. The armies clashed, and Richard was in the thick of the battle. He rode up and down the field, cheering his men and fighting his foes. Press forward, he yelled, urging his troops towards Henry's lines. Far away, at the other side of the field, he saw some of his men falling back. If others saw them, they too might retreat. So he spurred his horse and galloped towards the broken line, calling on his soldiers to turn and fight. He was barely halfway across the field when one of the horse's shoes flew off. The horse stumbled and fell, and Richard was thrown to the ground. Before the king could grab at the reins, the frightened animal rose and galloped away. Richard looked around him. He saw that his soldiers were turning and running, and Henry's troops were closing around him. He waved his sword in the air. "A horse," he shouted. "A horse! My kingdom for a horse!" But there was no horse for him. His army had fallen to pieces, and his troops were busy trying to save themselves. A moment later, Henry's soldiers were upon Richard, and the battle was over. And since that time, people have said, for want of a nail, a shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, a horse was lost. For want of a horse, a battle was lost. For want of a battle, a kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail. Excerpt from Song of Roland, King Charlemagne, visions of coming battles with the Spanish Saracens. The night is clear and the moon bright. Charles lies down, but he is full of grief for Roland, and Oliver's fate distresses him deeply, and also that of the 12 peers of the Frankish army. At Roncesvalles, he has left men dead and covered in blood. He could not prevent himself from weeping and mourning, and prays to God to protect their souls. The king is weary, for his pain is very great. He fell asleep, unable to do anything more. Throughout all the meadows, Franks lie asleep.
Not a single horse could remain standing, and those which need grass eat it lying down. He who knows true pain has learned a great deal. Charles sleeps like a weary man. God sent St. Gabriel to him. He gives him orders to guard the emperor. The angel spends all night at his head. In a vision, he announces to him a battle to be waged against him, and showed him of its grim significance. Charles looked up towards the sky. He saw the thunderbolts, the winds and frosts, and the storms and terrible tempests. Then before his eyes appeared fire and flames that suddenly came tearing down on all his men, burning their shafts of ash and apple wood, and their shields right up to their bosses of pure gold, splitting their shafts of their sharp spears, their hauberks and steel helmets great. He sees his knights in great pain. Then bears and leopards attempt to devour them, serpents, vipers, dragons, and devils. There are griffins there, more than 30,000. They all swoop down on the Franks, who cry out, "Charlemagne, help!" The king feels great anguish and pity. He tries to help them, but feels some restraint. Then, from a clearing, a huge lion approaches. It was most terrible, hostile, and fearsome. It attacks and makes for its own person. The two of them engage in a struggle, but he cannot tell which strikes and which falls. The emperor remains asleep.
Excerpt from Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring. Gimli's tribute to Moria. The company spent that night in the great cavernous hall, huddled close together in a corner to escape the draft. There seemed to be a steady inflow of chill air through the eastern archway. All about them, as they lay, hung the darkness, hollow and immense, and they were oppressed by the loneliness and vastness of the dolven halls and endlessly branching stairs and passages. The wildest imaginings that dark rumor had ever suggested to the hobbits fell altogether short of the actual dread and wonder of Moria. "There must have been a mighty crowd of dwarves here at one time," said Sam, "and every one of them busier than badgers, for 500 years to make all this, and most in hard rock, too. What did they do it all for? They didn't live in these darksome holes, surely." "These are not holes," said Gimli. "This is the great realm and city of the Dwarradelf, and of old it was not darksome, but full of light and splendor, as is still remembered in our songs." He rose, and standing in the dark, he began to chant in a deep voice, while the echoes ran away into the roof. "The world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone, when Durin woke and walked alone. He named the nameless hills and dells. He drank from yet untasted wells. He stooped and looked in mirror, and saw a crown of stars appear, as gems upon a silver thread, above the shadow of his head. The world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days before the fall of mighty kings in Nargothrond and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. The world was fair in Durin's day. A king he was, on carven throne, in many pillared halls of stone, with golden roof and silver floor, and runes of power upon the door. The light of sun and star and moon, and shining lamps of crystal hue, undimmed by cloud or shade of night, there shone forever, fair and bright. Their hammer on the anvil smote, their chisel clove and graver wrote. Their forge was blade and bound was hilt, the delver mined, the mason built. Their beryl pearl and opal pale, and metal wrought like fish's mail. Buckler and corselet, axe and sword, and shining spears were laid in hoard. Unwearied then were Durin's folk, beneath the mountains music woke. The harper's heart, the minstrel sang, and at the gates the trumpets rang. I like that, said Sam. I should like to learn it, but it makes the darkness seem heavier thinking of all those lamps. Are there piles of jewels and gold lying about here still? Gimli was silent. Having sung his song, he would say no more.
King Alfred and the Cakes, adapted from James Baldwin. Alfred the Great was the king of the West Saxons in England during the 9th century. His determination to protect England from Danish conquest and his emphasis on literacy and education. For his people have lifted him into the ranks of England's most popular ruler. This famous story reminds us that attention to little duties prepares us to meet larger ones. It also reminds us that leadership and responsibility walk hand in hand, and that truly great leaders do not disdain small responsibilities. In England, many years ago, there was a king named Alfred, a wise and just man. Alfred was one of the best kings England ever had. Even today, centuries later, he is known as Alfred the Great. The days of Alfred's rule were not easy ones in England. The country was invaded by fierce Danes who had come from across the sea. There were so many Danish invaders, so strong and bold, that for a long time, they won almost every battle. And if they kept winning, they would soon be masters of the whole country. At last, after so many struggles, King Alfred's English army was broken and scattered. Every man had to save himself and do the best he could. including King Alfred. He disguised himself as a shepherd and fled alone into the woods and swamps. Tired and hungry, he came to the hut. After several days of wandering, he came to the hut of a woodcutter. Tired and hungry, he knocked on the door and begged the woodcutter's wife for something to eat and some place to sleep. The woman looked with pity at the ragged fellow, as she had no idea who he really was. "Come in," she said. "I will give you some supper if you will watch these cakes I am baking on the hearth. I will give you, she said, I will give you some supper if you watch the cakes I am baking on the hearth. I want to go out and milk the cow. Watch them carefully. Make sure they do not burn while I am gone." Alfred thanked her politely and sat down beside the fire. He tried to pay attention to the cakes, but soon all his troubles filled his mind. How was he going to get his army together again? And even if he did, how was he going to prepare it to face the Danes? How could he possibly drive such fierce invaders out of England? The more he thought, the more hopeless the future seemed, and he began to believe there was no use in continuing to fight. Alfred saw only his problems. He forgot he was in the woodcutter's hut, he forgot about his hunger, and he forgot all about the cakes. In a little while, the woman came back. She saw her hut full of smoke and her cakes burned to a crisp. And there was Alfred, sitting beside the hearth, gazing into the flames. He had never even noticed the cakes were burning. "You lazy, good-for-nothing fellow," the woman cried. "You want something to eat, but you don't want to work for it? Now none of us will have any supper." Alfred only hung his head in shame. Just then, the woodcutter came home. As soon as he walked through the door, he recognized a stranger sitting at his hearth. "Be quiet," he told his wife. "Do you realize who you are scolding? This is our noble ruler, King Alfred himself." The woman was horrified. She ran to the king's side and fell to her knees. She begged him to forgive her for speaking so harshly, but the wise Alfred asked her to rise. "You're right to scold me," he said. "I told you I'd watch the cakes, but then let them burn. I deserved what you said. Anyone who accepts a duty, whether it be large or small, should perform it faithfully. I have failed this time, but it will not happen again. My duties as king await me." The story never tells us if Alfred had anything to eat that night, but it was not many days before he gathered his men and drove the Danes out of England.
Excerpt from the Song of Roland, the death of Roland. Roland feels that death is upon him. It is moving down from his head to his heart. He ran over to a pine and beneath it and lay face down on the green grass. He places his sword and the oliphant beneath him. Towards the pagan host he turned his head, because it was his earnest wish that Charles and all his men should say that he, the noble count, had died victoriously. He confesses his sins over and over again. For his sins he proffered his glove to God. Roland feels that his time has come. He is on a steep hill facing Spain. With one hand he beat his breast. O God, the Almighty, I confess my sins, both great and small, which I have committed since the time I was born until this day on which I have been overtaken. He held out his right glove to God. Angels come down to him from heaven. Count Roland lay beneath a pine tree. He has turned his face towards Spain. Many things begin to pass through his mind. All the lands which he conquered as a warrior, the fair land of France, the men of his lineage, Charlemagne, his lord who raised him. He cannot help weeping and heaving great sighs, but he does not wish to be unmindful of himself. He confesses his sins and prays for the grace of God. True Father, who has never lied, you who brought Lazarus back from the dead and rescued Daniel from the lions, protect my soul from every peril and from the sins which I have committed in my life. He proffered his right glove to God. Saint Gabriel took it from his hand. Roland laid his head down over his arm. With his hands joined, he went to his end. God sent down his angel cherubim, and with him Saint Michael of the Peril. With them both came Saint Gabriel. They bear the counsel to paradise. Roland is dead. God has his soul in heaven. The emperor arrives at Roncesvalles. Charles cries out, "Where are you, fair nephew? Where is the archbishop, and Count Oliver, and the 12 peers whom I had left behind?" To what avail, when no one could reply? "O God," said the king, "what great sorrow that I was not here when battle commenced." He tugs at his beard like a man beset with grief. His brave knights shed tears.
Henry's speech at Agincourt, William Shakespeare. It would be hard to read Henry's address at Agincourt and escape a brief twinge of regret for not having been one of the happy few to fight on St. Crispin's Day. The scene, from Shakespeare's King Henry V, is the English camp the moment before the battle. The year is 1415. Young King Henry of England has landed a well-equipped army in Normandy and begun a campaign to conquer France. Reaching Agincourt, the English forces found themselves facing a much larger French army. Oh, that we now had here but 10,000 of those men in England that do no work today. What's he that wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin. If we are marked to die, we are now to do our country loss, and if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. By Jove, I am not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if men my garments wear. Such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honor, I am the most offending soul alive. No, faith, my coz, wish not a man from England. God's peace I would not lose so great an honor as one man more methinks would share from me. For the best hope I have, Oh, do not wish one more. Rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, "Tomorrow is Saint Crispian." Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, "These wounds I had on Crispin's day." Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in his mouth as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispin Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world. But we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so vile. This day shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whiles any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day.
Excerpt from St. Augustine's Confessions, Book 1. What then is the God I worship? He can be none but the Lord God himself. For who but the Lord is God? What other refuge can there be except our God? You, my God, are supreme, utmost in goodness, mightiest and all-powerful, the most merciful and most just. You are the most hidden from us, and yet the most present amongst us, the most beautiful, and yet the most strong, ever enduring, and yet we cannot comprehend you. You are unchangeable, and yet you change all things. You are never new, never old, and yet all things have new life from you. You are the unseen power that brings decline upon the proud. You are ever active, yet always at rest. You support, you fill, and you gather all things to yourself, though you suffer no need. You support, you fill, and you protect all things. You create them, nourish them, and bring them to perfection. You seek to make them your own, though you lack for nothing. You love your creatures, but with a gentle love. You treasure them, but without apprehension. You grieve for wrong, but suffer no pain. You can be angry and yet serene. Your works are varied, but your purpose is one and the same. You welcome all who come to you, though you never lost them. You are never in need, yet are glad to gain, never covetous, yet you exact a return for your gifts. We give abundantly to you, so that we may deserve a reward. Yet which of us has anything that does not come from you? You repay us what we deserve, and yet you owe nothing to any. You release us from our depths, but you lose nothing thereby. You are my God, my life, my holy delight. But is this enough to say of you? Can any man say enough when he speaks of you? Yet woe betide those who are silent about you. For even those who are most gifted with speech cannot find words to describe you. My soul is like a house, small for you to enter, but I pray for you to enlarge it. It is in ruins, but I ask you to remake it. It contains much that you will not be pleased to see. This I know and do not hide. But who is to rid it of these things? There is no one but you to whom I can say, if I sinned unwittingly, do you absolve me? Keep me ever your own servant, far from pride. I trust, and trusting I find words to utter. Lord, you know that this is true. For have I not made my transgression known to you? Did you not remit the guilt of my sin? I do not wrangle with you for judgment. For you are truth itself, and I have no wish to delude myself. For fear that my malice should be self-betrayed, no, I do not wrangle with you. For if you, Lord, keep record of our iniquities, Master, who has strength to bear it?
Excerpt from Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring, Lament for Boromir. For a while the three companions remained silent, gazing after him. Then Aragorn spoke. They will look for him from the White Tower, he said, but he will not return from mountain or from sea. Then he began to sing. Through Rowan over fen and field, where the long grass grows, the west wind comes walking, and about the walls it goes. What news from the west, O wandering wind, do you bring to me tonight? Have you seen Boromir the Tall, by moon or by starlight? I saw him ride over 7 streams, over waters wide and gray. I saw him walk in empty lands until he passed away. And to the shadows of the north, I saw him then no more. The north wind may have heard the horn of the son of Denethor. O Boromir, from high walls westward I looked afar, but you came not from the empty lands where no men are. Then Legolas sang. From the mouth of the sea, the south wind flies, from the sandhills and the stones. The wailing of the gulls it bears, and at the gate it moans. What news from the south, O sighing wind, do you bring to me at eve? Have you seen Boromir? Wait. Where now is Boromir the fair, he tarries, and I grieve. Ask not of me where he doth dwell, so many bones there lie. From the white shores to the dark shores, under the stormy sky. So many have passed down on wind to find the flowing sea. Ask of the north wind news of them, the north wind sends to me. O Boromir, beyond the gate, the seaward road runs south, but you came not with the wailing gulls from the gray sea's mouth. Then Aragorn sang again. From the gate of the kings the north wind rides, and past the roaring falls. And clear and cold about the tower its loud horn calls. What news from the north, O mighty wind, do you bring to me today? What news of Boromir the bold, for he is long away. Beneath among him I heard his cry, there many foes he fought. His cloven shield, his broken sword, they to the water brought. His head so proud, his face so fair, his limbs they laid to rest. And Rhoros, golden Rhoros falls, bore him upon its breast. O Boromir, the tower of guard shall ever northward gaze. To Rhoros, golden Rhoros falls, until the end of days.
Excerpt from Song of Roland. King Charlemagne avenges the death of Roland. When the king sees the onset of evening, he dismounts in a meadow on the green grass, lies down on the ground, and prays to God that for him he should stop the sun in its tracks, postpone nightfall, and maintain daylight. See, an angel now comes again and speaks to him. Immediately he commanded the king, Charles, ride on. Daylight will not fail you. You have, as God knows, lost the flower of France. You can avenge yourself on this criminal race. With these words, the emperor mounted his horse. God performed a great miracle for Charlemagne, for the sun remained where it was. The pagans are fleeing, the Franks are in close pursuit. When Charles sees that all the pagans are dead, some slain, and even more drowned, the noble king got down off his horse. He prostrates himself on the ground and gave thanks to God. The emperor has lain down in a meadow. He places his great spear by his head. That night he would not remove his armor, and he wore his shining saffron hauberk. He kept laced upon him his helmet,
studded with gold and gems, and girt about him his sword, joyeuse, which had no peer, and whose color changes 30 times a day. We could speak for a long time about the lance with which our Lord was wounded on the cross. Charles has its point. Thanks be to God, which he has had mounted in his golden pommel. Through this honor and this excellence, the name joyeuse was given to the sword. Frankish barons should not forget it. From it, they derived their battle cry, Montjoie. For this reason, no race on earth can withstand them.
Excerpt from Aeschylus's Oresteia. Clytemnestra, famous for her sharp tongue and strong opinions, announces the Greeks' victory over the Trojans. She speaks of her hope that the Greeks were merciful and reverent in their treatment of the Trojans, something she knows full well would not be the case. She speaks boldly, then dismisses her comments as worthless and she is merely a woman. Notice the sarcasm at the end. The Achaeans have got Troy upon this very day. I think the city echoes with a clash of cries. Pour vinegar and oil into the self-same bowl. You could not say they mixed in friendship, but fight on. Thus variant sound the voices of the conquerors and the conquered from the opposition of their fates. Trojans are stooping now to gather in their arms their dead, husbands and brothers. Children lean to clasp the aged who begot them, crying upon the death of those most dear, from lips that will never be free. The Achaeans have their midnight work after the fighting that sets them down to feed on all the city has. Ravenous, headlong, by no rank and file assigned, but as each man draws his shaken lot by chance. And in the Trojan houses that their spears have taken, they settle now, free of the open sky, the frosts and dampness of the evening. Without sentinel set, they sleep the sleep of happiness the whole night through. And if they reverence the gods that hold the city, and all the holy temples throughout the captured land, they, the despoilers, might not be despoiled in turn. Let not their passion overwhelm them. Let no lust seize on these men to violate what they must not. The run to safety and home is yet to make. They must turn the pole and run the backstretch of the double course. Yet, though the host come home without offense to high gods, even so the anger of these slaughtered men may never sleep. Oh, let no fresh wrong be done. Such are the thoughts you hear from me, a woman merely. Yet may. Yet may the best win through, that none may fail to see. Of all good things to wish, this is my dearest choice.
O flame and pain that sees me once again, my Lord Apollo, King of light, the pain and me the pain. This is the woman and lioness who sleeps with the wolf when her proud lion ranges far away. She has cut me down. She has shredded my virtue. She has shredded the virtue of my punishment into her bowl of wrath. She sharpens the blade against him who has brought death to a mistress's home. Why do I wear these mockeries upon my body? This staff of prophecy, these flowers at my throat. At least I will spoil you before I die. I'll down break. Oh yeah, this
me, make someone else, not me, luxurious in disaster. Lo now, this is Apollo who has stripped me here of my prophetic robes. He watched me through all of this gloom, where my loved ones who hated me with all their hearts so vain, so long. I have been called like a gypsy from door to door wander, a beggar, half corrupt and half starved. Oh yeah, and I endured it all.
Excerpt from Aeschylus' Orestia. Here Athena sets up the first court of law to hear Orestes plead his case for the murder of his mother, exacted to avenge for her murder of Agamemnon, Orestes' father. She establishes the court's authority, the role of the jurors, and settles the verdict. If it please you, men of Attica, hear my decree now. On this first case of bloodletting I have judged. Hear the reverence of citizens. Their fear and kindred do no wrong, shall hold by day and in the blessing of night alike, all while the people do not muddy their own laws with foul infusions. But if bright water you stain with mud, you nevermore will find it fit to drink. No anarchy, no rule of a single master. Thus I advise my citizens to govern and to grace, and not to cast fear utterly from your city. What man who fears nothing at all is ever righteous? Such be your just terrors, and you may deserve, and have salvation for your citadel, your land's defense, such as is nowhere else found among men, neither among the Scythians, nor the land that Pelops held. I establish this tribunal. It shall be untouched by money-making, grave but quick to wrath, watchful to protect those who sleep, a sentry on the land. These words I have unreeled are for my citizens, advice into the future. All must stand upright now, take each man his ballot in his hand, think on his oath, and make his judgment. For my word is said. It is my task to render final judgment here. This is the ballot for Orestes I shall cast.
Excerpt from Homer's The Odyssey. Odysseus meets many challenges on his journey. This is one of the more humorous altercations he has with the royal sons of Phycaea. Alcinous' handsome son made his way to the center and addressed Odysseus. Come, sir, won't you take part in our games, if you're good at any sport? It is only right that you should be an athlete, for nothing makes a man so famous during his lifetime as what he can achieve with his hands and feet. Come along, have a try, casting your cares aside, for it won't be long before you're off on your journey. Euryalus now interposed and insulted him to his face. You are quite right, sir. I should have never taken you for an athlete, good at any of the games men play. With a black look, the nimble-witted Odysseus retorted, That, sir, was an unbecoming speech. You strike me as presumptuous fool. And it shows that the gods do not grace men equally with the attributes of good looks, brains, and eloquence. A man can be quite insignificant to look at, but the gods can grace his words with charm. People watch with delight as he speaks unfalteringly, with winning modesty. He stands out in the gathering and is stared at like a god when he passes through the town. Another may be as handsome as an immortal, but yet quite may be deficient in the graceful art of speech. Now you, sir, are distinguished in appearance. The gods themselves cannot prove it, but you are short of brains. You've stirred me to anger with your inept remarks. I am no novice in sport, as you suggest, but consider myself to have been in the first rank. With this, he leapt to his feet, not even troubling to remove his cloak, picked up the biggest discus of all, a huge weight, more massive by far than the Phaeacians normally used. With one swing, he launched it from his mighty hand, and the stone hummed on its course. Flying smoothly from his hand, it overshot the marks of all the other throws.
Julius Caesar, a monologue from Act 3, Scene 2, by William Shakespeare. Brutus explains to the Roman citizens why the murder of Julius Caesar was necessary, in his opinion. Be patient till the last. Romans, countrymen, and lovers, hear me for my cause, and be silent that you may hear. Believe me for mine honor, and have respect to mine honor that you may believe. Censure me in your wisdom, and awake your senses that you may the better judge. If there be any in this assembly, any dear friend of Caesar's, to him I say that Brutus's love to Caesar was no less than his. If then that friend demand why Brutus rose against Caesar, this is my answer. Not that I love Caesar less, but that I love Rome more. Had you rather Caesar were living and die all slaves, than that Caesar were dead to live all free men? As Caesar loved me, I weep for him. As he was fortunate, I rejoice at it. As he was valiant, I honor him. But as he was ambitious, I slew him. There is tears for his love, joy for his fortune, honor for his valor, and death for his ambition. Who would be so base that would be a bondman? If any, speak, for him have I offended. Who is here so rude that would not be a Roman? If any, speak, for him have I offended. Who is here so vile that would not live his country? If any, speak, for him have I offended. I pause for a reply. Then none have I offended. I have done no more to Caesar than you shall do to Brutus. The question of his death is enrolled in the Capitol, his glory not extenuated wherein he was worthy. nor his offenses enforced for which he suffered death. Here comes his body, mourned by Mark Antony, who, though he had no hand in his death, shall receive the benefit of his dying, a place in the commonwealth, as which of you shall not? With this I depart, that as I slew my best lover for the good of Rome, I have the same dagger for myself when it shall please my country to me my death. Julius Caesar, a monologue from Act 3, Scene 2 by William Shakespeare. Mark Antony's eulogy of Julius Caesar. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones, so let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it were a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man, so are they all honorable men, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me, but Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and I'm sure he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me.
Julius Caesar, a monologue from Act 3, Scene 2 by William Shakespeare. Mark Antony speaks to the Roman plebeians concerning the brutal betrayal and death of Julius Caesar at the hands of the jealous Senate, even his beloved friend Brutus. If you have tears, prepare to shed them now. You all do know this mantle. I remember the first time ever Caesar put it on. 'Twas on a summer's evening in his tent that day he overcame the Nervii. Look, in this place ran Cassius' dagger through. See what a rent the envious Casca made. Through this the well-beloved Brutus stabbed, and as he plucked his cursed steel away, mark how the blood of Caesar followed it, as rushing out of doors to be resolved, if Brutus so unkindly knocked or no, for Brutus, as you know, was Caesar's angel. Judge, O you gods, how dearly Caesar loved him. This was the most unkindest cut of all, for when the noble Caesar saw him stab, ingratitude more strong than traitor's arms quite vanquished him. Then burst his mighty heart, and in his mantle muffling up his face, even at the base of Pompey's statue, which all the while ran blood, great Caesar fell. Oh, what a fall was there, my countrymen! Then I and you and all of us fell down, whilst bloody treason flourished over us. Oh, now you weep, and I perceive you feel the dint of pity. These are gracious drops. Kind souls, what weep you when you but behold our Caesar's vesture wounded? Look you here. Here is himself, marred as you see with traitors. I come not, friends, to steal away your hearts. I am no orator, as Brutus is, but as you know me well, a plain, blunt man, that love my friend, and that they know full well that gave me public leave to speak of him. For I have neither wit, nor words, nor worth, action, nor utterance, nor the power of speech to stir men's blood. I only speak right on. I tell you that which you yourselves do know. Show you sweet Caesar's wounds, poor, poor dumb mouths, and bid them speak for me.
Thanks to our judges, Ms. Lendon, Snyder, and Ms. Hancock, and our homeroom teachers for working with you guys, and your parents for working with you all. You did a great job. All the speeches were really good, and especially 7th grade, great job. You guys did really well. 8th grade, you really set the bar for us. And I like to see that. I like to see our 8th graders in their last year really knock it out of the park. So good job. I can tell you all worked very hard on this. I know for some of you, it's not that difficult. And for some of you, it's really difficult. And I get that. You know, some people just naturally take to being in front of people. It's not so bad. And some people, it's almost like a phobia. But you all face your fears, no matter where you fall in that spectrum. And today we had excellent speeches, and I'm really proud of the job that you did. So congratulations, and have a good rest of your day.